Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, the 26th of April, you're going to be stuck with us demonstrating a couple of our favorite patterns. And the weekly tip, we're going to continue with the wrap. For now, though, we're the Beattys from Boise, Idaho, and leading the process off tonight will be Gretchen, my lovely wife. She'll talk to you about what's going to happen next.
Well, tonight I'm going to tie a fly that's really simple, this drowned Trico. But the reason I chose it is because the story behind it, and in our book, it's like a 3-page story, so I won't read the whole thing to you, but it talks about the experience of figuring out a Trico hatch. And Gary believed that he got better results using a submerged fly rather than a dry one during a heavy Trico spinner fall. And he proceeded to share Justin's new pattern with me, the drowned Trico. So over the years, this is Al talking, over the years I've proven myself the importance of submerged flies presented during Trico activity, and the down Trico has proven its worth to me many times over when presented during a hatch or spinner fall. So not to say that we don't use different Trico patterns at different times, but lots of times if you're having a difficult time, this little pattern is great. It's quick to tie, it's easy, and it's very, very effective. So this is what we're looking at, is this little Trico. And now, if you'll notice, the difference in these two is the tail. The tail on this one is actually tied with the a feather tail. But it is so light that you can't see it very good. So I'm going to be tying with some mousse just so you can see what I'm doing a little better. Yeah, let's go to the recipe. So the recipe is just a regular dry fly hook, 18 to 22. I'm tying this in a size 10, just so that you can see it, which I don't think we'd ever want to do normally. The thread is white, and then I go to black. The tail is the blue dun hackle barbs, and I'm going to be using some mousse just to compensate for the color on the camera. The abdomen is the white thread, the thorax black double magic dubbing, and the wing is Antron, tied pretty sparse. I'm using that Antron body wool, the Zelon stuff, and I'm just using one piece. I mean, what do I want to say?
Strand.
Huh?
One strand?
One strand of it, yeah, whatever. Anyway, and then a thread head. So we'll just go over here and take a look at the materials. So here's the Antron body wool. It's the Lure Flash. I'm going to use some wax on my dubbing. Here is our double magic dubbing, my 2 threads. I was going to show them the feather. I guess we lost the feather somewhere.
Here.
Oh, here's the feather.
I didn't think you were going to use it.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to use it, but I thought I'd show it. This is the feather that I used on the one fly, which is just a real light dun feather. So let's get started. This first thread that I'm using is a 3/0, so it's a little heavier. Danville, because I want to have a nice smooth body, so I'm doing the body as I'm tying on the tail. And notice that I want a pretty good tail end here of what would be considered waste, but we'll use that. And I'm going to hold this thread parallel. Well, pull it a little bit towards me to compensate for thread torque, trying to keep that thread right on top of the hook. Back to the bend. I'm getting a little bit of twist in it, so trying to keep the thread fairly smooth. And notice I started my base wrap about at the 1/2 point. So I'll go over here to the materials and just get a couple of nice pieces of, it's kind of weird just trying to get 2 hairs out of that. I'm used to getting a big clump. So we'll come back here, and I've got a couple that look pretty good, about the same size. And I want to be sure that I've got them even, the tips are even. I want that tail to be about the length of the shank. So I'll come up here and measure it. And remember, the shank is the bend to behind the eye, not the full fly. I'm going to hold this a little towards me to compensate for torque, and it just went a little further. You can kind of, boy, this thread must be slick. Okay, there we go. We want to keep that right on top. Looks pretty good.
We had a question from Little John about the feather. It was actually a blue dun feather, and it was not schloppen. It was out of a whiting tailing pack, which would be a rooster feather.
I'm going to take a bodkin just to be sure I can get these separated. Okay. Take a couple of wraps here. And then I can check to see if I've got what I want. Looks like I've got a nice division. So I'll take a couple more wraps and get rid of the excess. Trim off the ends. Okay, now I'm going to really flatten this and make one more pass. To make a nice body and be sure that that tailing material, since I'm using mousse, doesn't show through. Now it'll be time to get rid of this white thread. So I'll get my black thread over here. Changing thread is easy. Just wrap over the previous. And you can trim your thread and the waist of the black at the same time. Now I'm going to make a little bit of a base wrap here for my thorax. And some dubbing wax. So just kind of touch this. Now, when Gary did his dubbing, he never twisted it. I played around with that again today, and I can't just not do some twisting. So I'm just going to take a little clump of this and touch it to my thread. That doesn't hardly look like enough, but I'm going to just barely twist it so that it is a little controlled. See how if I've got enough or not. I want this fairly wild and woolly here. Let's take a look at the back side. Oh, that looks pretty good. But I think I've got just enough space now for my wing. The lure flash generally doesn't have knots in it like poly yarn, but you still have to kind of take a look at it to make sure that you don't have any knots. So I'll just kind of take my scissors and run it through to make sure that I've got no knots in there. We'll turn it this way. I want the tail just to be about the length of the wing, about the length of the thorax, but really you don't have to worry about that because we can trim that just however we want it. I'm going to do a finger thumb tuck and take some wraps. Trim the excess. Tuck that all in nice. And remember, let's see, we'll come here and just trim this off a bit. And remember that your whip finish starts back by the wing and goes forward to the eye. And that's a good whip finish. That head may be a little larger than I normally would like, but there's a brown trico. Now that is a fast tie, and I don't know what else to tell you about it.
We got some questions here. In fact, Brian is saying that it's a very interesting pattern. Excuse me, Brian. And you indicate you hadn't heard of it before. And in fact, this is the book it's from. This is LaFontaine's Legacy. And this book came about as a result. Gary and Gretchen and I were working on the book. And one day the phone rings and it's Gary on the line and he says, Al, I'm not going to make it. Will you publish the book for me? And sure. So anyway, he died 3 days later.
Those are his last flies.
His last flies, that things that he and we had worked on. We had shot videos with him and so forth on all of these. And anyway, there's 25 of the last ones in that book.
When we were working on the video, when we scripted a video, we always kept a camera on the vise, and we would talk about what we wanted to do. And then Gary would often lapse into one of his stories, and we recorded all of those. So the stories and the quotes that you see in the book are taken from that tape that we did when we were working on the video. So it's kind of fun to read kind of his last stories. And, you know, even at the very end, Gary could tell a good story.
Yeah, and Paul Fidelis, you're right. There is a light on my chest, and it's gradually working into my face right now, and it's the sun. And well, we'll just have to put up with it for a little bit. But my face, it don't make any difference. I mean, give or take, we're going to get, when you get onto the vise, you don't see it, so that's fine. You get it back on us, and a little bit of light on me probably is a good idea. Any questions out there besides the ones that we had here?
I couldn't see looking at the angle he showed the fly, but is the wing flared at all? So it's fanned at the tip or not?
Just
a little. Okay, a little bit. Okay,
a bit.
Thank you. Fish.
And I didn't put thread under like we sometimes do, because the dubbing on the thorax holds the wing up just, I think, at a really good angle. I like the way it looks, just the way it is.
Well, we got to swap materials around and everything, so Gretchen, I'll grab mine.
Do you want me to leave the hooks here or not?
No, I got my own hooks.
Okay.
I have a question. Could you ever consider a quill body on that pattern? The one that Gretchen did?
Don't know why not. I mean, it sure could. I'll be doing we'll talk about quills a little bit later, and you can decide whether that would be a good idea or not. In fact, in a size 18 or a 22 chuck, if you want to do a quill body, I'd love to do it on sharing next week, tied by you.
Okay, it's a deal, but I'll be in Bucharest. It might be a little wrong time of day.
Yeah, that's no problem. We'll wait until you get back, and then we'll do the 18s and 20s and so forth. Let's see. I think we're just about switched around here.
Which T?
Oh yeah, here you go. Give me you can grab yours.
There we go.
All right, there we go. And that's the pattern that I'm going to be doing tonight. It's just a concept pattern, like darn near everything we tie. All you got to do is change sizes and colors to match a whole bunch of different things. And in fact, let's take a look at the recipe here real quick. The recipe for the bullet-headed stonefly, that's the one we want. And you can tie it on a 2 to 4x long dry fly, size is 6 to 14. The one I'm using tonight is a 3x long. The thread is black or whatever you want it to be, because stoneflies will be different colors. I just happen to do a black version. The tail is black, and you notice there's no material there. Black. I'm going to be using moose, but I've done it with Beattys. I've even done it with a tuft of marabou, and with a foam body, a little tuft of marabou just kind of swings back there. It doesn't sink anything. And if you want a wire rib, you sure can do it. I'm not going to tonight. The body is going to be foamed, and it can be wrapped or done as an extended body, either way. The wing is squirrel. The head is a bullet head, and it's a deer or elk. And the legs are your choice. And before we go on, though, I wanted to talk to you about one of the things on this fly. My main point in presenting this, I've done bullet heads for you before and showed you how to spin hair and all that type of stuff. I'm going to show you how to redistribute some of the materials, especially if you're a person with not the best hair spinning skills or hair manipulation skills. I'm going to give you a couple of things that you might try that will make your flies look a heck of a lot better. And we call it redistribution of materials. And we'll get started with that. So you've already seen the recipe. Let's take a look at the materials for a moment.
Not redistribution of wealth.
We don't have it. Hey, if you want redistribution of wealth, you don't have to worry about it if you go into the fly tying business, because there is none.
That's true.
And let's see, I'm going to have to start with black thread, and that's just what I'm going to use. And I'm going to be tying all this tonight with 6/0 thread. And I'll just take this little guy out of here. And
Of course, he fell in the.
I accidentally dropped him in the trash. I mean, you know, when you're under the lights and Zoom live in front of the whole doggone world, all the way to Australia, no less, you drop it into the trash. I mean, it's just, what else could you do with that? Anyway, we'll stick a hook in the vise. And I'm going to use a Dutch Bachman trick, a little bit modified. Dutch showed this the other night, where he took a pair of pliers and he would roll the hook in the jaws of the pliers and kind of roll down the barb. Well, I can't hold my hand steady enough to do that. And I'm finding, though, that I can do that with the vise. I can just roll it from side to side and pinch down that barb, or roll down the barb like Dutch did. Only he used a pair of pliers and I just use, and there you go. We've got a roll down barb. No click or any breaking off or anything like that. All right. Now let's see. I need to start out by putting my bullet head material on. Often people tie a bullet head, and the last thing they do is put the hair on. I think that's a mistake. Now, I'll leave it up to you as to how you want to tie your flies, but I always put the hair on first, because that's the thing that, if it isn't going to work, I don't want to lose a whole fly over a messed up application of hair at the very end, when it could have been at the first. I'm just going to put a little bit of a thread base right there at the front, and I'll slip a half hitch in there. I want to keep that pretty close to the head, but if it doesn't get to the head, I'll show you how to fix that. If it slides back on you, I'll just show you how to fix that. Anyway, let's slip over here now.
Does that half hitch help keep it there by the?
It just keeps it from slipping around when I'm jerking around trying to work around this camera. It will keep my thread at the head section. And let's go to the materials area now. I'm going to do something I hadn't planned on doing until about 5 minutes before we went live tonight. I've had this bunch of hair. I've just hated the darn stuff, and you can see it's got it's kind of curved and everything. Well, I've been trying to straighten it out by just taking my thumbnail and going over this, and it's been coming around pretty good. And I also want you to notice there's not much of it left. I want to get rid of this so bad, and I know I could throw it away, but I'm just too darn cheap to do that. You know, I said you never make any money when you're tying flies. Well, you don't. And so you don't throw anything away. So I'm just going to cut a big bundle of this out. And I'm going to throw away all but layers 1 and 2. And you all know about that. I'm not going to go into it and bore you with that. But I'm going to stop out over the waste bin for a minute and get rid of all the trash and short fibers. Just looking pretty good. Let me get over here to the, oh, yes. Now I got some broken ones in there. I may as well get rid of them right now while I can see them. What I'm going to do is just kind of fan those out and see if I can find the broken ones and pull those out. Looks like I had way too much hair there, but after I get through pulling out all the bad ones, it's not going to be nearly as much extra hair as I need. Let's get rid of that. That one right there. And I'll just go ahead and stack it and we'll see what we can do from there. I know that. Okay, everybody, I forgot to turn on some of the lights. So they're coming on now. And so don't go blind on me here. There we go. I was wondering why it was getting dark on everything when my hands moved
No
to the
wonder
scene.
I couldn't see.
No wonder you couldn't see, Gretchen. I know. You always complain about those lights blinding you anyway. So, because they are below us, and when you're looking down at the device, you're looking right into the lights too. Anyway, I'm evening the tips of that hair up in the hair stacker and pulling those out. And let's make sure we don't have any real short ones in there. There are a few real short ones, so let me get rid of those. I'll just kind of knock them out. I still see a broken tip or two. I'll get rid of them. And that's looking just about right. So now I'm going to measure this bundle of hair so that it's about as long as the shank. And I'm going to set this in right up here, squirm it around the hook a little bit, take a couple of about 3 or 4 semi-tight turns. If you considered tight 100%, this is at 75%. Now I'm going to reach in here and just cut off the waist. And now here's where a lot of folks get into trouble that don't understand spinning hair real well. And so I'm going to try to keep this from spinning. It's going to spin some. It's just that kind of hair. But I am trying to tighten up just a little bit there and keep it from doing a lot of spinning. And let's take a look and see what we've got here now. Oh, good. Yep. What I've got here now is I want you to notice, looking right into the camera, that over here on this side, I've got a pretty weak application of hair. And over on this side, I've got more. I am going to try to move some of this around so that I can, you see, this is all it's to it. When that's at 75%, you can move this stuff around.
75%.
75% tight,
Oh,
not
okay.
100% tight. And you see how that's coming around now and starting to get more evenly distributed around the hook there. Yeah. So there we are. All you got to do is just kind of pull it into place. Question.
Yes. Are you using a weighted bobbin to keep pressure on the hair like you did last week?
Yeah. I didn't realize it, but I don't normally do that, but yes, I did.
Thank you.
Okay, yes. Okay, so now let's check one other thing here. Okay, that's not quite at the end of the, right up against the eye. There's a little bit of a space there, so let me fix that. There is a thing called Chris Helms hair pusher or whatever it was. I love the darn thing. I got that from Chris Helm many years ago. And you notice in front there, it's got a couple little notches to fit around the hook. And it allows me to come in behind here and push that forward tight up against the hook eye. In fact, I can feel it hit that eye. It also kind of ends up spreading all that out. See how that's spread all around the hook now? So anyway, the reason this was made, though, is for guys that spin hair and tie bass bugs and all that stuff. It was made for pushing the next bundle of hair further back on the hook. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm using it for a different purpose. Now I'm going to wrap back over this ends here, if you will. And it moved a little bit as it kind of cinched in there. Well, let's make sure that I don't have to redistribute some stuff. Go. All right, good. All right. Now let's get our tail on. And I'll come back almost all the way to the hair in the middle, or in the front rather, and I'll stop about 3/4 of the way back. Let me slip over to the materials area and I'll get some mousse. And it'll be a reasonably sparse tail, but not real heavy. And you can see that that's about how many fibers I've got there. And I've got the waste, and I'm going to move over here to the waste bin and get rid of that real quick. And now we're back over here. Put that in the stacker and get those tips all lined up. Now I want the tail to be about as long as the gap of the hook is wide. So let's just see. That's not very long. Maybe a little bit longer than that, but that's about how long I want the tail. I'm going to tie it on right there in about the 3/4 point and wrap to the back. All right, there we go. And I got a wild one that doesn't want to get with the program. That's what scissors are for. And I want you to see right here that I've got all this waste from the tail mixing in with the waste from the head. Well, one of the reasons that I stopped at the 3/4 point, it's a heck of a lot easier to separate the waste from one and the other out. And what I want to do though is trim this tail so it will blend into the waste in behind that spun hair, or that hair head. Not exactly spun, it's just sort of moved around. So kind of cut there at a real severe angle. All right, there we go. Now it's time for the body. And I'm going to slip over and get some foam. And all I did is take a strip of 2mm foam, and I cut a couple of strips off of it. And I'll just come back over here to the vise, and I'll take this longer, skinnier one, and I'll just use that one. I used the fatter one this afternoon, and tonight I'll just use a shorter, skinnier one. And I'm just going to tie it on after trimming kind of a point there at the back, and just cinch it on right there at the back of the hook. Okay, now wrap forward. There's always one hair in the operation that don't want to get with the program. That's what scissors are for. I'll move forward now. And I'm just going to wrap. One of the things about wrapping foam, if you think you're going to wrap it smooth, you can. And you will crush all the air out of it, and all the flotation will be gone. So you do not want to try to make it a nice smooth body. You want to push the material around the hook rather than try to pull it tight around the hook. Just kind of push it into place there, and you won't lose all of the air inside of that foam, and it'll still maintain flotation rather than squeezing it all out by trying to pull it tight or stretch it tight. So push it into place with your fingertip. All right, now will get right there, and I'll tie this off. Oh, and let me trim out that little bit of waste in there, and I'll wrap that right up against there. Now the wing. Well, first off, let me figure out just exactly how big I want my head. I want the head to come back about to there. So I'll kind of mark that with my thread. Now we're going to slip over and get some squirrel. All right, and now I'm just going to grab the very ends and get rid of all the trash. We'll go out over the waste bin on the way back to the vise. Ready. And we'll slip that into my stacker. And put the base on it and tap it up really good. You can make the wing just as long or as short as you want it. One of the interesting things, at least that I noticed in some of the rivers in North Idaho, there was a black stonefly that was on those rivers, and maybe some of you have noticed it on some of your rivers. These doggone black stoneflies, some of them had little bitty short wings. I mean, they'd be a little bitty short wing, like about that long. And then other ones right next to it would have a long wing. Well, it turned out the long wing ones were the females, and the males didn't need to go anywhere. They only had one job, and they didn't need wings for that. So you can figure out from there, all they did is do their job, and then the females flew off to lay eggs. Anyway, I'm going to measure this so it comes to about the middle of the tail. That's where I like mine. You can have yours wherever you want yours. And I'm going to cut the waist off right now. Good job, Al. Boy, that was wonderful. And now I'm going to use another distribution technique, and that is taking a turn around the bundle of hair. We've been doing this for years, and we showed you all about this a while back. And I want you to notice how it really gathers that hair. Let me just cinch it up just a little bit. But the things that I don't want to do, now I want to show you what we've got, is if I wrap over these butt ends, I'll be locking that hair in. But right now, I have a loop over the bundle, which makes that bundle stay up on top. You can see it's gathered. And now we've got a couple of just cinching it into place. Darn, that's kind of a skinny wing. And when I look at it from the back, it doesn't cover anything. Usually a stonefly or even a caddisfly, their wings spread out a little bit, kind of fan around things. Well, I am going to take my thumbnail now and press down right there. What that does is takes the hair here and takes the butt ends of that hair and pushes it over that way and over here when you do that, and they swap back and forth. And I want you to notice how this is spread out right here now. That was all pulled together before. Well, you kind of get the idea what's going on now. I'm going to rearrange or redistribute that hair until I get the wing profile that I want. Now let's take a look here from the back. That's looking about just what I want. It's a lot better than that one that was all pulled together. So now I'm just going to cinch that down. And now it's time to push our hair back. I see a lot of bullet head flies get messed up in the last little bit that they spend with the fly tire, and here's how to mess it up. Well, first off, some of these moved on me, but I can still redistribute a little bit by pulling things around. There we go. Good. Now you can see they're kind of fanned out a little bit. I'm going to take my bullet head tool, and it's nothing more than a piece of rubber tubing with a makeshift homemade epoxy handle. You can, all the supplies that you need are at Ace Hardware. Okay, I'm just going to kind of push that back a little bit. And I want to show you right here the things that you want to look out for, and the difference between a good looking bullet head and one that's not is a hair that does this. Let me pull that guy over across. See how that hair is crossing over? You don't want that. You want to kind of,
let's take a closer look at that.
okay. You see how this hair here is crossing over the others? And you don't want that. You want these hairs all lined up perfectly so that you get a really beautiful sweep back on the bullet head, because what you don't want to have is a bullet head with a lot of hairs crisscrossing each other. So now I'll get in there and I'll push this back, grab everything and take a look. Well, they're not really great. There's some loose ones over here on this side, and that's what your thumbnail's for. And your fingers. You don't just take that bullet head tool and push it back, call it good, and cinch it down. You get everything arranged. You use it to kind of arrange things and get things going. Now I've got a hair doing exactly what we talked about. See if you can see this right here. These two hairs are crossing each other, and they're going to end up crossed over several by the time I get them tied down. So I will push them back. Now I'll take my finger and keep pushing back. And you notice how my left hand comes loose as I pinch down with the right, and then I grab with the left as I get ready to pinch some more. What I'm doing is pinching and pushing those fibers into place. Now, grab my bullet head tool, use it to line up the last of those fibers. And let's see how that turned out. Yep, turned out pretty good. And I got a hole right here. You see that spot right there? Remember, redistribution. You just kind of nurse those fibers from the top down around the edge, making sure you don't cross hairs over each other. You want to keep those hairs all looking nice and straight. And I pretty well have that closed up, so I'm happy. I'll just cinch that down. And I like the bottom trimmed off of my bullet heads, when they're dry flies anyway. If they're a wet fly, then no. But, all right. And now it's time to get over to the materials area again, and I'll get my legs. If you want legs, do them. If you don't, then you don't need to. I just have some right here. The reason I'm using this color is because they're left over from a demonstration I did a couple weeks ago, and they were still laying here on the desk. I wanted to get rid of them. So I'll just show you a trick that I learned from a young fellow in Logan, Utah. Gretchen and I moved to Montana, and after we'd been there a few weeks, we got invited to a club gig down in Logan, Utah. And I was sitting next to this young fellow who worked for a fly shop. He never spoke 2 words the whole time he was tying, but he could crank bugs out like you would not believe. And I learned this trick from him. And you see people all the time trying to line these things up and get their legs all straight. And they put a leg on over here and then one over here. And then having a heck of a time lining them up. What you do is you put them all on this side right here. 2 soft turns. Take the one over here over to the other side. Cut them apart. If they're too short or too long, or they're too long, then change it. Put a couple of soft wraps in there to control the X. And now it's time to put on a whip finish. And there we have kind of a Madam X looking sort of a, and those legs in the back are a little bit long, so let's just grab them. Trim them off just a touch. There we go. And there's our bullet head stonefly. Questions?
John wanted to talk about how you can identify a broken hair.
Oh.
Like a broken tip? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, what it is, John, it's a broken tip. And let me get a bundle of hair here and then we'll put it in the stack and I'll show you what we're talking about. I'll be right back. I'll just get a bundle of hair here. Let me clean out the waste and I'll stack them, and then now let me take this fly out of here because all it's going to do is get in the way.
Should we zoom?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now, won't you know, I'll bet you I don't have a single broken tip in here. Wouldn't that just be the way of it? And you always have broken tips in here. Okay, there you go. John, you should be able to see 2 broken tips. Zoom in, Greg.
Yeah, one on the far left and one on the far right. Is that what you mean?
That's
Yep.
exactly it.
Gotcha. I see.
And
I see
and
now.
there's a bad one down in the middle Coming in from the right-hand side, 1, 2, 3, about the fourth hair in,
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
problem too. And if you look
Okay.
in coming from the left, you can see about the sixth hair is cut off too.
Okay. I see what you're talking about now. Cool.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
So, another question is, how do you know how much weight to put on the bobbin for holding materials?
Well, I'll tell you, it's real simple.
How much will fit?
Here is a hole in the spool, so it can't be any bigger around than that. And don't get it too long in there, or your arms of your bobbin holder will not close up, and it'll just free run on you. So, anyway, bottom line is, it's something that looks like, if you go to the camera there, there is the thread, and there is a piece of lead that I put in it. And where did I get the lead? They're free drift sinkers that's used in the bait store. I got them at Cabela's in the bait section, not the fly section.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So I can
Yeah,
use
for
hollow
sure.
weight lead that we use for steelhead fishing as well for that. So which would be
I
about
have no,
all
it's some kind of a drop sinker, and I'm sure it's used in a lot of different configurations.
right. Thank you.
Do you tie this with any other colors of foam?
Oh yeah, everything under the sun. What bug are you trying to imitate? Take the tail off and tie it in a size 16, and you've got a caddis. I mean, yes. And in fact, if you'll join us on East Meets West on Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to be tying caddis. Eric Austin will be tying a Hemingway, and I'm going to be tying a kind of a version of that. It'll be a bullet head Wonder Wing caddis, and it'll be in a much smaller size. I usually fish those Wonder Wing caddis in sizes 14 and smaller. However, for camera purposes, I'll be tying it on a larger hook. But wait a minute, there it is.
There.
Where are you going, face? Right there. Gretchen dash. Don't forget to put the dash. Gretchen dash Al Beatty. We're joined at the hip, you know. Anything else?
That Stonefly looks an awful lot like the Madam X.
Not too far off. The Madam X is tied quite a bit different. It's the
Yeah.
Madam X is a half head. It's not a full head, and it's just folded over, and the wing and the head are all made out of the same thing.
Yeah, but it resembles an awful lot of
Oh, very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
There was another question, Al, about tricos. What kind of insect are they? I think Little John may have asked that. I'm not sure who did.
A trico is a really, really small mayfly.
Now, one thing about your stonefly, your bullethead stonefly, the black stonefly is actually called a Nemora,
Okay.
and they're typically smaller than the normal stonefly. The first hatch typically is the squala, and the Nemora comes off early like that, but it's always small. And in the Missoula area, a very popular fly pattern for the squala hatch and spring into early summer is the rogue stone.
Yep.
And the rogue
Sure
stone is a very, very similar profile to the bullet head you dressed this evening.
Yeah, that's what we did is I cannot tell you how many different variations of what you just saw here that we did for stoneflies, caddisflies, and hoppers. You know, and it got called one thing or another based on color or the way you tilt the wing, or whether you'd put a knotted leg on one and not on the other, and all that stuff. But it was that base design, or as we say, concept flies, not a pattern. It's because it's really difficult to identify one from the other and so forth. Anyway, I think we've answered all the questions unless there's some more. And Dutch, thank you for the comment. By the way, folks, I had planned on at the end of May, the last 2 weekends that Gretchen and I would be tying there. No one had selected those. I finally talked Dutch into sharing a new pattern. So there's a new pattern coming, and it is a great pattern for both trout and warm water fish, especially bass. So you're going to want to join us on the 24th when Dutch, shows us a whole new fly. And of course, you're not going to tell them anything about it, are you, Dutch?
Not unless you ask me to, but I don't.
Okay, well, when we get to the sharing, we might have to do a tease on it then, don't you think?
Okay, that's a
All
deal.
right, good. Hey, and now it's time to go to the tip, folks. A couple of weeks ago, we showed you a double hidden wrap. I got so many requests from people or suggestions from people on what to name this thing, and I'd play around with this name and that name. And you know what? We're going to call it the wrap. And it's not going to be fancy, and there'll be a whole bunch of other people that'll put some other kind of a twist on it, and that's fine. We don't care. It's a great way of tying off a fly. On about 80% of your flies, you can improve the size and quality of the head by using this technique. And I'm going to share it with you right now. Let's see. Let's get over to the vise. Get my fly out of the vise here. And I have a mock-up made. I'm going to re-show the technique itself of tying off. And let me just, all right, there we go. All right, now here's the situation. The way almost everybody ties flies, you're gonna finish the fly and you're wrapping your dry fly hackle towards the front of the fly. I'll just wrap a few turns of hackle. And when you get up to the hook eye, it's time to tie that feather off. And what do? Well, you grab it, you tie it off, and you'll probably anchor it with a couple of turns of thread. And now you've got this stub right here, and you got to cover it up. If you cut it off, you still have to cover it up. And sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. And in any case, you could end up with a big lopsided head. Well, let's back up just a bit. I'm going to show you another way to tie off that feather. Okay, now I've wrapped my feather up forward on the hook to meet the thread. And we have two sides to our thread. You've got the side facing the camera, facing you, and the side away from you. Well, the side away from you, as you wrap onto the hook, the side away from you is what you see. What I want to do is hide that stub using a technique that will push that stub back into the already wrapped hackle. And the way I do that is to come in behind, back around, back in front, and now I hold the feather to the side and wrap around the hook. And that now tied that feather off, and you don't have any stub sticking out anywhere there. I could tie that off right now and call it the head. And it's got two turns around it. It's as strong as having two turns around it from another direction. And anyway, that's called the wrap. So another way of tying off your hackles. Now let me come forward here. And David Buckner asked the question, could you use something like that for wrapping a quill body? Well, darn, you sure can. I played with it a little bit this week. So I'm going to wrap this quill. What this quill is it's a feather from a whiting quill body cape. I pulled all the fibers off and left that piece of shaft exposed, and I'm just going to start wrapping it. And David's question was, can you use the wrap to avoid what we're going to experience here in just a moment? And what we're going to experience is getting ready to tie this off. As we get ready to anchor that, I want you to notice what happens here. There is a exposure right there. Now, it probably don't make one iota of difference unless you don't want that showing. And a lot of times you just cover it up. Well, let's go back and let's see if the wrap can be used to fix that so that you don't have that type of exposure. Let me back up and make sure. Okay, I've got all my wraps. Well, first off, what I don't want to do is point the stub back into the already wrapped quill. I said, darn, that don't work. So I can't wrap the same direction that I did before, because if I do that by going around back and coming around to the front of the thread, I'll end up with the stub pointing back like I have on the wrapped hackle. So I have to go the opposite direction. That's one turn, and that's the second turn. And now we have to tie that all off. And let's find out what if it makes any difference or not. And it keeps it there tight, but you get that wrap around, and I don't think it does it's any better. So quite frankly, in tying off your quills, it's my estimate that you'd probably be better off to do it the normal way and cover it up with dubbing like we have been doing for the last 100 years.
Two wraparounds. Can you just do one?
I don't know how good that would hold.
Okay.
Let's try it.
Because I was thinking that looks kind of messy, so maybe if
So,
you...
okay, you go back to the camera on the vise and let's unwrap and see. All right, now let's unwrap one more here. Well, it's slipping on me as I'm wrapping. I've got a bad spot there. I'm going to see if a Dutch Bachman technique of using the weighted bobbin will help in pushing that stem tight back against the previous applications. Well, that seems to be working. Well, good. Now, you said one turn, Gretch? Okay,
Yeah,
let's
just force it forward. Yeah, I think that looks a little better.
that did clean it up a bit, and it still puts the stem out there where it needs to be covered up by
Yeah.
dubbing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's any better or not, but what I want from all of you is give it a try. The worst thing that can happen, you don't like it, you can go back to doing what you've been doing for the last umpteen number of years. Any questions?
I've been tying up a bunch of wet Royal Coachman, and I thought I'd try that technique with the peacock. That works slicker than heck.
I like the way it works on peacock and ostrich and some of that type of stuff, or that hackle that I just wrapped does an excellent job of hiding the hackle. You know, another place it works really good is on the back of a Renegade, that you don't have to try to hide the stub of hackle. You just push it back in there and then wrap your peacock body and have a nice clean division line between the hackle and the peacock. And now it's time for sharing on Beattys Fly Tying Fridays. And this is where you get to join all of us sharing what you have going on in your life. All right. So let's see, is Evelyn here tonight? Yep, there she is. Let me get her spotlight you, Evelyn. There's Gretchen's fly. I can make out the wing now. Oh, yes. A white wing and a white body on a white paper. Difficult, isn't it? Yeah. But you're the good artist, Evelyn. You made it show through.
Okay, good. Thank you. I try my best. And then here's the one that you did.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, love that one a lot. Good job.
Thank you.
You even got some water in there.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. Hey, thank you much, Evelyn.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you much.
welcome.
Okay, there you go.
This is a Carrie Stevens pattern. I can't tell you who tied it, but I'd really like to have somebody tie a Carrie Stevens type pattern. You know, where we because I saw Aaron Cully, one of our Atlantic Guild guys, tied one with a very small hook. In other words, they're half the size of a Carrie Stevens fly. Does anybody want to attempt a streamer like that? This is a particularly beautiful one in bright. I don't know if you can tell the colors in the video, but it's a hen hackle. It has that black bar on the bottom. I substituted when I tie it. I substituted a Actually, it's an Amherst. It's been dyed that same color. It worked just
Sure.
fine. But
Sure. Okay, thanks, Chuck. And to answer your question, well, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had Peggy Brenner, and she tied a Gray Ghost.
oh,
Anyway,
right.
she tied
That's
a
right.
Rangeley pattern. Dutch, I would love to see the orange bomb, the mole something or another.
Let's see, we got, okay, that,
Wow.
the fundamental fly was this one right here. It's the same profile, olive rabbit strip. The ingredients, the recipe is exactly the same, except that an interesting difference on the basic one I started with, you'll notice that hackle, it's Coq de Leon Schlappen. And really, really shows up nice in the finished fly. And I like the way it looked in the water and so forth. And in our area, we've got a lot of sunfish, brim. So I did this one using pine squirrel. And that's also the Coq de Leon Schlappen hackle. But the rest of the elements of the pattern are the same. So I took the basic pattern and did this one, which is the same exact pattern, except it's using olive rabbit strip, and it's using a woven hair hackle instead of Schlappen.
I think the woven hair is going to be a real winner because it won't totally collapse.
That's exactly right, Alan. And in the water, it performed exactly that way. And this one is kind of the last version I've done because the rabbit strip is, I think it's something new from Hairline. They call it shimmer rabbit strip. And you can buy the rabbit strip in orange, black, olive, I think purple, but the tips are dyed either silver or gold. And I have to tell you, the black with gold tips is an awesome looking pattern, but this is the shimmer rabbit strip, and it's the rest of the recipe is exactly the same. And the only difference else on this one is it's also got a woven hair hackle, but I dressed this one to be about an inch long. And I was curious to see how a longer woven hackle would function in the water, and it did just perfectly.
Well, I'm looking forward to a fishing report, and I'm looking forward to the process of putting that together because you can call that what you want to, but it's the bomb as far as I'm concerned. Damn, that looks good.
Al, I'll tell you one very quick story. That I've got a friend I fished with in Missoula, probably 20 some years, and he has a habit of renaming my flies. I took a pattern up there last year. I wanted a stonefly, a grasshopper stonefly. I called it the stone hopper, and as soon as I showed it to him, he called it the stopper.
And it's stuck ever since, right?
I anticipated this year when I show him this one, I was going to call it the Missoula Sculpin. And I thought as soon as I tell him it's the Missoula Sculpin, he's going to call it the Mulpin. So
you
I
beat
just
him.
went ahead and named it the Mulpin to get it out of the way.
You
But
beat
when I
him to
put
it.
when it has the woven hair hackle in honor of George Grant, I call it the Gulpin, which seems to be a pretty good name for a sculpin. And he's
I love
also
it.
worked well on the sand bass or the white bass run because they come in deep, and it really there's 12 wraps of wire back here at the start of the bend going toward the eye.
Wonderful. Thank you so
We'll be
much.
looking forward to that on the
We'll be
24th.
looking forward to the 24th. Now,
It'll be
anyone
fun.
else here who wants to share?
Hey, Al. So when we were talking the other day about Rangeley Lake or Carrie Stevens flies, folks were talking about having trouble finding them. I found this is a 9X long, and it's a Mustad 94 720. And I found them at Celine's Fly Shop. And she
Hmm.
had them in 2s and 4s. And I also found a 7X that Cabela's / Bass Pro has, and it's a Mustad L87AP. But both of those
Excellent.
were in stock and orderable, and got them delivered very quickly.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Barry. So that good bit of information there.
Remember while fishing? So what Al did is he mentioned that people use finger socks because I was getting myself cut because I had caught quite a few trout between that and the line. So my wife made this, but he found a location on the internet where they actually make these. So this is a way that if you get cuts in your fingers, like in through there and there, you can use a little sock. This is made out of the same material, swimsuit material is. My wife made it, that you can kind of protect your fingers. And I wanted to give a shout out to Al, bringing that forth to help me on my upcoming fishing trip. So thank you, Al.
Absolutely, Bill. Thank you. So not all of my emails are about fly tying. Sometimes it's about burnt fingers. Anyway, Neil, you got your hand up?
Yes, I have a couple books I'd like to share so you can see where my money's been going
Spotlight
lately.
you? Okay, there you go, Neil.
Thank you. I'm a very big fan of European fly tyers. They tend to be very artistic and very talented. One of them is, does that show up for you?
Yes, sure does.
Roberto Messori. This is his third book. It just came out 2 weeks ago. And he has one on nymphs, one on emergers, and one on mayflies. The one on mayflies is terrific. And the one I got today, which is really blowing my mind, is the much awaited The History of the Clink by Hans von Klinkhammer. And it has several flies in it, of course, the Klinkhammer, and the recipes for them and the stories behind how they were all developed. And
That's it for now, folks. Thanks so much for joining us. But for now, it's a wrap until next time. Take care.